I remember that night clearly. It was a few months ago. I was working my usual night shift at the hospital. I've been a nurse for years, so I knew the quiet hours were the best time to catch up on paperwork. But that night felt off from the start. As I walked through the bright, sterile corridors, my shoes echoed on the tile floor. Everything seemed normal at first. I checked on my patients, did my rounds, and noted their conditions. But then I came across an empty bed. The chart was still attached, and I looked around, waiting for someone to return. Nothing happened. I thought maybe I missed a transfer. It wasn't a big deal, right? After that, I saw something even stranger. I passed by a nurse talking softly to a patient down a dimly lit hall. I couldn't see the patient. I approached her, curious. "Hey, who are you talking to?" I asked. She turned, smiled, and said, "Just checking in." I looked again, but there was nobody. My skin felt cold. I forced a smile and walked away. Maybe I was just tired. Later, I saw strange footprints on the floor in a corridor that was usually deserted. I hesitated. Who could have left them? They didn't look familiar, and my heart began to race. I should have reported it, but I didn't want to seem crazy. Who would believe me? As the nights went on, I heard whispers among the staff about patients who had vanished. I thought it was just chatter, something to keep the stress at bay. But the feeling of unease settled deep in my stomach. It felt like someone was always watching me, but I never saw anyone. I tried to shake it off. On my third night, I went back to the empty bed. It was still vacant, but this time I felt an unsettling presence. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to ignore it. Then I caught a glimpse of movement at the far end of the hallway. I rushed after the figure, but they disappeared. No one was there. Then I heard it, a soft voice calling, "Help me." It echoed through the empty halls. My heart pounded hard. I didn't know if I should go closer or run away. Was it a prank? Was I losing my mind? The whispers of the vanished patients haunted me. I asked myself if I was discovering something terrible or if I was just overworked. Every shift made my skin crawl. That night, I stood frozen in place. "I need your help," the voice said again. I turned around slowly. No one was there. My breath caught in my throat. I left the empty bed behind. I didn't want to be there anymore. I felt a mix of fear and confusion wash over me. The shifts ended, but those moments didn't leave my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister lingered in those halls. I still don't have answers. The nights felt longer after that. Each sound, each shadow made me jump. I couldn't forget the whispers or the voice. I was never sure what I experienced that night. And now, every time I walk down the hospital corridors, I can almost hear that voice calling for help again. The next week, I went back to work with a knot in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. Every time I entered the building, I felt like I was stepping into a different world, one where shadows moved without a source and whispers seemed to slither through the air. That night was unusually quiet. I finished my paperwork faster than normal, trying to keep my mind occupied. But as I walked through the long corridors, set to deliver medicine to a patient, I got a strange sense of being followed. I paused, glancing over my shoulder. No one was there, but the sensation lingered. I reached room 304, where Mrs. Henderson lay asleep. She had been a long-term patient, usually cheerful, but now drifting in and out of consciousness. I prepared her night meds and began to tap her gently on the shoulder. "Mrs. Henderson," I said softly, "it's time for your medicine." Her eyes flickered open. She focused on me. The fear I saw in her gaze made me hesitate. "You're not supposed to be here," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "They're watching." I pressed my lips together, my heart racing. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She shook her head, clearly refusing to say more. Just then, the lights flickered. I quickly dismissed it as a routine electrical issue, but Mrs. Henderson's expression didn't change. She looked terrified. As I moved to walk out, I felt a cold breeze sweep down the hall, carrying a faint whisper I couldn't make out. I turned back to her. "Are you okay?" She barely nodded, her eyes still fixated at the door, as if expecting someone. I felt the chill creep into my skin and quickly left the room, feeling the weight of her gaze on my back. The night continued, and I made my rounds. As I passed the nurse's station, I overheard two of my coworkers speaking in hushed tones. They glanced my way, then fell silent. I felt exposed, the air thick with unspoken words. I had heard rumors about the vanished patients and wondered if they were discussing the same thing. I cleared my throat and approached them. "What's going on?" I asked, forcing a smile. They exchanged nervous glances. Finally, one of them, Sarah, whispered, "Just something weird happened last night." "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling the adrenaline spike. "Tell me." She hesitated, biting her lip. "It's just, a patient in room 202 was found wandering the halls. When we asked her where she was going, she said she was looking for someone who needed help." My stomach sank. Room 202 was empty on my last shift, just like the voice I'd heard. "Did you find her?" Sarah shook her head, her eyes wide. She just stared at us with this vacant look, like she wasn't even there. I pulled away, my breathing quickening. I needed air. I rushed into the break room. Alone, I paced back and forth, trying to grasp what I was doing here. The hospital felt sinister, as if something beyond comprehension lay in wait.
That's when I saw it, a shadow darting into the corridor from the corner of my eye. Instinctively I followed, my heartbeat loud in my ears. I rounded the corner, and everything went dark. Panic gripped me. "Hello?" I called out. Silence answered. Then a voice echoed, chilling me to my core. "Help me." I took a deep breath, my instincts screaming at me to run, but I needed to know what was happening. I stepped forward, determined to find the source, only to see the flickering lights illuminating a figure at the end of the hall. I froze, realizing I was not alone. I stood there, frozen, as the figure at the end of the hall became clearer. It was a woman, her face pale and gaunt, her hair tangled as if she had just awoken from a deep sleep. Her eyes darted around as though she were searching for something, or someone. "Who are you?" I managed to gasp, my voice shaky. The figure didn't respond. She looked right through me, her gaze unfocused. Then, suddenly, she turned and sprinted down the corridor. I hesitated for only a moment before following. Panic surged through me, but curiosity drove me closer. I felt like I was in a nightmare, where running only deepened my fears. My footsteps echoed in the hollow hallways, the flickering lights casting long shadows that played tricks on my mind. "Wait!" I shouted, feeling a tightness in my chest. I rounded another corner, but the figure was gone. I looked around frantically. She couldn't have disappeared that quickly. The sound of a door creaking caught my attention. I hurried toward it, my heart racing. Room 201. I remembered this patient, a woman who had been very quiet during her stay. But she hadn't been scheduled for discharge, I was sure of that. With hesitant breaths, I pushed the door open. The room was dark, and an unsettling silence filled the air. The curtains were drawn tight, and the only sound was the faint beeping of the heart monitor. I slowly stepped inside, but the bed was empty. The sheets were rumpled, as if someone had just been thrown from the bed. I turned back, panic rising. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Is anyone here?" A feeling of wrongness settled in my stomach. I stepped out, ready to search the hallway again, when I nearly collided with Sarah. "Did you see her?" she asked, her face pale. "See who?" I pressed, trying to catch my breath. "That woman, the woman room 202. She was," I stuttered, trying to gather my thoughts. "I thought she was in 201. Is she okay now?" Sarah's eyes filled with dread. "What do you mean? Room 202 is empty. It's been empty for weeks. What did she look like?" I fumbled for words. She had long hair. She looked lost. Sarah's face paled even further. That's her. That's the one who disappeared. My heart sank. How could she have disappeared when I just saw her? I felt the walls closing in as I tried to comprehend what was happening. Wait, I said, grasping Sarah's arm. Are we talking about the same person?
Because I just saw her. She was right. Before I could finish, a loud crash echoed behind us. We turned to see the doors at the end of the corridor swinging open, lights flickering violently. I barely had time to react when a rush of cold air swept past me, sending a chill down my spine. "Run!" Sarah shouted, her eyes wide with fear. I followed her as we dashed back down the hallway, the sound of footsteps echoing behind us, as if the shadows themselves were pursuing us. My breath quickened with each step. Whatever was happening was escalating. I grabbed my radio, trying to call for help, but the static filled my ears instead. "Help!" I yelled into it, frustration clawing at me. Just then, I caught a glimpse of the figure again at the far end of the corridor, her face still obscured. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the chaos. I felt a strange tug in my chest, a mix of fear and the urge to assist her. But before I could process what was happening, a loud crash echoed again, and the lights went out completely. Darkness enveloped us. Heart pounding, I gripped Sarah's hand tighter. What do we do now? The only answer was a low, hollow laugh that reverberated through the darkness, making every hair on my neck stand on end. The darkness swallowed us whole. I could barely see my own hands in front of my face, and the silence felt like a heavy blanket smothering all sound. Sarah squeezed my hand tighter, and I could feel her trembling beside me. "Can you see anything?" I whispered. "No," she replied, her voice shaking, "but we have to keep moving." I took a step forward, feeling my way along the wall. Every little noise made me jump. The low laugh from before echoed again, bouncing off the walls, making it impossible to tell where it came from. Fear ran through me like ice water. "Let's head for the stairs," Sarah suggested. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but there was an urgency there. We turned and carefully shuffled down the corridor. The only sounds the soft thud of our footsteps and our uneven breathing. Each step felt like an eternity. The flickering lights had given way to total darkness, and I had no idea how far we'd gone from the elevator. Suddenly, I stumbled over something on the floor, falling against the wall. "What the?" I started, but Sarah gasped. "Do you hear that?" she murmured. I froze. Faint, distant voices floated through the darkness. I strained to make sense of them. There were no patients in the hall. Everyone should have been asleep. The murmurs grew louder, as if they were coming from just beyond the door of room 202. "Should we check it out?" I asked, my throat dry. Sarah shook her head, her expression tense. "I don't think we should. What if it's her?" I felt an irrational pull toward the door, even as my instincts screamed at me to stay away. But what if someone needs help? The debate raged inside me. Before I could argue further, the voices ceased abruptly. Silence swallowed the corridor again, stretching out like the calm before a storm. "Let's just keep moving," I finally said, half convinced myself. As we turned away, I noticed a flicker of light down the hall. It was faint, but there it was. "Look!" I pointed toward it. Sarah squinted against the darkness. But the light vanished just as quickly as it appeared, leaving only shadows in its wake. "Maybe it's the way out," I said, feeling a surge of hope. We hurried toward the spot where the light had been, but as we got closer, the air thickened. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. I felt the space around us shift, as if something was waiting just out of sight. Then I heard it, a low, raspy whisper right next to my ear. "Help me." I spun around, but there was nothing there, just dark, empty space. My heart raced as I glanced at Sarah, whose eyes were wide with terror.
"I don't like this," she stammered. "We need to go, right now." As we turned to leave, something caught my eye in the corner of the corridor. A shadow shifted, a fleeting movement that sent a bolt of panic through me. And then, just like before, it was gone. "Did you see that?" I exclaimed, gripping Sarah's arm. "Something was there." "We have to go," she insisted, her voice rising. We stumbled back towards the exit, when suddenly the lights flickered back on. The stark brightness hurt my eyes, and I squinted around, disoriented. I looked back at room 202, and the door was ajar, barely swinging on its hinges. "We can't leave without knowing," I said, torn. "What if it's a bad idea?" she urged, glancing nervously down the hallway. But curiosity and dread collided inside me, driving me forward. I stepped toward the door, heartbeat pounding in my ears. I had to know what or who was in there. "Just a quick peek," I whispered, pushing the door wider. That's when I saw it. A broken mirror lay shattered on the ground, reflecting my wide, terrified eyes. And something else. Something creeping up behind me. I turned slowly, heart racing. The cold touch of fear snaked down my spine. Standing behind me was a figure, barely visible in the brightness of the room. Their face was obscured, but I could make out the outline. My breath locked in my throat. Who are you?" I managed to squeak out, my voice trembling. The figure didn't answer. Instead, they lifted a hand, slowly pointing to the shattered mirror on the floor. Confusion washed over me. What did they want? "Sarah!" I shouted, my eyes never leaving the figure. "Get back!" But she was frozen, staring at the floor. I felt panic swell in my chest as I stepped back, trying to put distance between us. The figure began to step forward, their movements jerky and unnatural, almost like they were struggling against something unseen. "Please, help me," it rasped, mimicking the whisper I had heard in the dark. The sound sent chills coursing through me. "What do you want?" I yelled, backing away further until my back hit the wall. The figure continued to advance, their face still hidden. I strained to see, desperate for something familiar. Nothing made sense. All I had wanted was to help, and now I was paralyzed by fear. Without warning, another loud noise erupted from behind me, and I jumped. The door to room 202 slammed shut on its own, the loud bang echoing through the corridor. The figure halted, and in that moment, I dared to glance at Sarah. She was pale, her eyes darting between me and the door. "We need to leave," she urged. The figure stopped moving, standing completely still. I felt my heart pounding in my ears, drowning out everything else. I turned back to the figure, who suddenly swayed, as if being pulled by an unseen force. "Get out!" it shouted, the voice sharper now, filled with anguish. The urgency spurred me. I grabbed Sarah's hand and pulled her toward the door. "Run!" I shouted, and before I could think better of it, we bolted into the corridor. Bright fluorescent lights hummed above us as we sprinted, the normality of the hospital contrasting sharply with our chaos. I glanced over my shoulder, expecting to see the figure chasing us, but the hallway was empty. "Did that really happen?" Sarah panted. "Of course it did," I replied, panting hard. "We can't stop now." Just ahead, I spotted the stairs that led back to the main floor. It was our only way out. We rushed for the stairs, and I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. I was desperate to escape whatever that figure was. Just as I reached for the door to the stairwell, I heard the whisper again, a chilling reminder of what we had just left behind. "Help me," it called, echoing off the walls. I hesitated for a split second, dread curling in my stomach. The call was so pitiful, but I couldn't let it distract me. I pushed through the door, pulling Sarah behind me as we stumbled down the stairs. the heavy door slamming shut behind us. I knew we weren't safe yet. Whatever had been in that room was still lurking nearby. "Do you think it's going to follow us?" Sarah's voice wavered as we reached the next floor. "I don't know," I admitted. I glanced back nervously, feeling paranoia prick at the back of my mind. But we need to keep moving. Just as I turned, I spotted something on the floor, a piece of the broken mirror reflecting light onto my face. My stomach dropped. I hadn't imagined it. I had to know what it all meant. But for now, we needed to get out first. And then, out of nowhere, the lights flickered again, plunging the stairwell into darkness. I felt the air shift, thickening around us, and an icy terror gripped my heart. "Sarah," I whispered, "hold on tight." At that moment, the lights flickered back on, and I saw it, a shadow standing at the foot of the stairs, without a face, without a form, just a dark silhouette waiting for us. I froze for a second, my mind racing. The silhouette loomed, and dread flooded my system. It didn't move, but I felt its presence pressing against me, suffocating. "Just keep moving," I whispered, squeezing Sarah's hand tighter. She nodded, but I could see the fear in her eyes. I turned to bolt back upstairs. Just then, a loud clang echoed through the stairwell, making me jump. My heart thudded against my ribs. It sounded very close. "What was that?" Sarah gasped. "I don't know, but we can't stay here." My voice was urgent, filled with the panic that spurred me to act. I tugged her along, and together we ascended a few more steps. But another noise resonated behind us, a scraping sound like fingernails against metal, followed by a low, resonant growl. It sent chills down my spine, and I dared to glance back. The shadow seemed closer, as if it had glided toward us in the blink of an eye. We rushed up the stairs, heartbeats drumming in sync with our footfalls. When I reached the landing, I flung open the door and burst into the hallway, dragging Sarah along. "Where do we go?" she panted, her face pale. "Anywhere but here," I half shouted, scanning the deserted corridor. The echo of our breaths filled the air, a reminder of how alone we were. I could still hear that sinister growl echoing in my mind, creeping up on me with every heartbeat. "Look!" Sarah gasped, pointing toward the nurse's station. A figure stood there, bent over, seemingly busy with something. "Is that—" I squinted, trying to see better. The fluorescent lights above flickered, creating an uneasy atmosphere. As we approached cautiously, the figure turned, their face shrouded in shadow. "You shouldn't be here," they hissed, voice low and eerie. "Wait!" I shouted, recognizing the voice. "Are you a nurse? Help us!" But the figure didn't respond, their head tilting unnaturally, as if considering us. "Help," they repeated, and my stomach dropped. It echoed the same plea I had heard before, but this time it was infused with something colder, a dissonance that made my skin crawl. "Run!" I screamed, grabbing Sarah's arm again. I didn't wait to see what else would happen. We dashed past the nurse's station, adrenaline propelling us further down the hall. Ahead, the exit doors glimmered like a beacon of hope. Maybe we could escape. But as we reached for the handle, smoke poured from the gaps in the door, swirling ominously. Dread flooded back into my bones. "No," I whispered, recoiling. "We can't go that way." "I don't want to go back," Sarah pleaded. I was about to respond when the air around us started to tremble. The hallway distorted as if it were bending, warping like a funhouse mirror. It felt like we had stepped into another world, one filled with dread and shadows. "Stay close," I shouted, pulling her toward the nearby break room, a flicker of safety amidst the chaos. As we stumbled inside, I heard that dreadful whisper again, this time clearer than before. "Come find me." Panic surged through me, driving me towards the door. "What the hell is that?" I gasped, looking back into the hallway. Shadows darted past, figures shifting behind the haze of smoke. "Please, let's just get out," Sarah urged, her face a mask of terror. With a newfound resolve, I gripped the doorknob, steeling myself for what lay beyond. Then, everything went dark. I blinked, trying to adjust to the sudden darkness. For a moment, I thought I was still stumbling through the hallway of shadows. Then, I realized I was still in the break room, but now it was a thick, unnatural dark, like being trapped in a heavy fog. I strained to hear any sounds, but silence enveloped us, every creak and whisper gone. "Sarah?" I whispered, panic creeping in. I felt her hand slip from mine, and I cursed under my breath, reaching out blindly. "I'm here, just stay close." "Where are you?" Her voice trembled, barely above a whisper. "I'm right here," I replied, forcing my voice to stay steady. I could feel my heart racing again. I took a cautious step forward, but my foot caught on something, a small table maybe. I stumbled and cursed again, mind racing with worry. "Is the door still open?" I asked, voice hushed. "I can't see anything," she cried out. "I think it's locked." I held my breath. If we were trapped in here. "Let's find a window," I suggested, my voice steady despite the dread pooling in my gut. I felt my way around the room, searching for an exit, anything to get us out. The air was thick and suffocating, almost electric. Breathless, I reached a wall and slid my hands along it until I felt the cool glass of a window. "Found one!" I exclaimed, feeling a rush of hope. "Can you open it?" Sarah's voice was closer now. I fumbled with the window, but it wouldn't budge. "It's stuck. What if we try to break it?" "No," Sarah gasped. "We'll make too much noise." Just then, I heard a faint sound. A soft thump came from somewhere deeper in the break room. I froze, the hairs on my neck standing on end. "What was that?" I whispered. "I don't know. Just keep working on the window." But I was too scared to focus. My eyes adjusted a bit more, and I could make out shadows shifting around us. "Sarah," I said, my voice shaking, "I think there's something else in here." I heard her breathing quicken, and then she suddenly gasped. "Behind you!" I turned, my heart pounding. I could just make out a shape creeping along the edge of the room. A figure moved closer, slowly, tentatively. It had no discernible features, just a void against the faint light of the break room. "Get away!" I shouted, instinct kicking in. I lunged at the thing. It felt like pure instinct, a survival response. But just as I reached it, the figure dissolved into a haze, vanishing into thin air. "What was that?" I stammered, stumbling back. "I want to leave, now!" Sarah screamed. I turned back to the window, desperate. One last push, and it finally gave way, creaking open. A rush of cold air rushed in, filling my lungs with fresh air. "We can escape!" I yelled. But as I turned to pull Sarah towards the window, the shadows came alive again, swirling around us like a storm. I grabbed her hand, pulling her towards the opening, but we were both ensnared in the chaos. Then, out of the darkness, I heard that whisper again, clearer than ever. "Come find me." I stumbled, my vision blurring, heart pounding in terror. "We have to go," I shouted, yanking Sarah toward the window. And just when I thought we were free, the shadows lunged. A rush of icy darkness closed around us, dragging us back into the void. That's when I realized this place wasn't just haunted, it was alive. I gasped as the shadows tightened their grip, pulling us deeper. I couldn't see, but I felt Sarah's fear matching mine, cold and clammy. The air thickened like molasses, and every ounce of instinct screamed for me to fight back against whatever force held us. "Hold on," I shouted, squeezing her hand tighter. Then, just like that, the pressure released. We stumbled forward into a small clearing, thrown out of the swirling darkness. I blinked, trying to regain my bearings. But the break room felt different now. Dim light flickered as if a faulty bulb was attempting to revitalize the space. "Where are we?" Sarah whispered, wide-eyed and still clutching my arm. "I don't know," I admitted, scanning the room. The shadows had retreated, but an uneasy feeling hung in the air. "We need to find a way out of here." I sensed movement to my left. It was just a flash, but I could swear I saw something pale darting among the cabinets. "Did you see that?" I asked, my heart racing again. "Yes," she replied, shifting closer to me. "What was it?" "Let's check it out," I said, moving cautiously toward the spot, heart hammering in my chest. The remnants of panic still lingered, but curiosity crept in, pushing me to investigate. As I rounded the cabinets, I found a small, flickering light. It was a phone, lying face down on the floor. I picked it up, revealing a cracked screen glowing with incoming messages, each one marked as unread. The name on the screen sent a chill down my spine. Danny, my coworker. "Why is Danny's phone here?" I muttered, glancing at Sarah, who was peering over my shoulder. "He didn't come in today." "Maybe he left it?" she suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. I hit the button to turn on the screen. The messages faded in and out, crowded with urgency. I scrolled cautiously. "Need your help. This place isn't what it seems. They're watching." I froze, a chill winding through me as I read the rest of the messages. It sounded like he was trapped, just like us. "Sarah, we need to find him." A sudden crash erupted from across the room, shattering the silence. Startled, we turned to see one of the cabinets had swung open, emptying its contents onto the floor. Papers, a half-empty coffee cup, and even a few of those weird fluorescent Band-Aids scattered everywhere. Then I heard it. A low, rumbling groan from somewhere behind the chaos. Panic shot through my veins. What was that? Before I could answer, a figure emerged from the dark corner of the room, unsteady on their feet. My breath caught as I recognized the familiar silhouette, but as I stepped closer, I was met with uncertainty. It appeared just like Danny, but his eyes were wide and glassy, like he was seeing something we couldn't. "Help me," he said, though his voice echoed strangely, distorting the plea. "Danny," I stepped forward, but as if sensing my approach, he recoiled and stumbled back into the shadows. "No, stay away. Don't let them take you." "What do you mean?" I shouted, confusion and fear mixing in my gut. And just as fast as he appeared, the poor version of Danny vanished back into the darkness, his warning echoing in my mind. Then everything went silent again. "What just happened?" Sarah whispered, her grip on my arm tightening. "I don't know, but we have to get out of here," I replied, glancing nervously over my shoulder. I turned to grab the phone, but it slipped from my fingers, smacking against the floor. The screen went black. "Come on," I urged Sarah, backing toward the exit. But even now, I could feel the shadows fluttering at the edges of my vision, lurking, waiting. I couldn't shake the feeling we were not alone in this room. Not anymore. As we moved toward the door, the whisper returned, more insistent this time. "Come find me." I shivered at the sound. Whatever this place was, it wouldn't let us go easily. I pulled Sarah toward the door, her eyes darting nervously around the room. The urge to flee surged within me, but the whisper echoed again, clawing at my resolve. "Come find me." "Focus," I said, forcing myself to act. "We need to keep moving." I pushed the door open, an eerie creak groaning in protest. The hallway beyond was dim, stretching out like a tunnel into the unknown. The light overhead flickered uncertainly, casting long shadows that seemed to elongate and reach for us. "Where do we even go?" Sarah asked, hesitating. "Let's follow the hallway," I said, hoping it would lead us to a way out, or maybe to Danny. "We can't stay here." As we moved forward, the air shifted. It felt heavier, thick with tension. Each step echoed, amplifying the silence that smothered us. I glanced back toward the break room, half expecting to see Danny appear again, but nothing stirred in the shadows. Then I heard it, a soft rustling sound. I froze, straining to pinpoint where it was coming from. "Do you hear that?" I asked. "Yeah," Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. We stopped outside a set of double doors leading to the supply room. The rustling grew louder, like something or someone was inside. My instinct screamed to leave, to sprint away, but curiosity held me in place. "Let's check," I began, but Sarah shook her head violently. "No way, we should just keep going." "No," I insisted, glancing toward the doors. "What if it's Danny?" She hesitated, clearly torn between fear and concern for our friend. "Fine, but we'll be quick." I pushed the doors open. The supply room was dark, scattered with boxes and medical supplies, a maze of clutter. "Danny!" I called out, my voice trembling. The rustling stopped. A heavy silence settled, and then a soft whimper broke through. It sounded human. I stepped further in, heart pounding. "Hello? Is anyone there?" From behind a stack of boxes, a small figure emerged. It was a girl, no older than 10, clutching a teddy bear. Her face was pale, eyes wide with fear. "Help me," she whispered, her voice shaky, mirroring Danny's plea. "Where's your family?" I asked, crouching to her level. They left," she said, looking past me into the shadows. "They didn't want me anymore." My stomach twisted. "It's okay, we'll get you out of here. What's your name?" "Emily," she answered, tears trickling down her cheeks. "But there's something bad here." The shadows wrapped around me as I tried to process her words. I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing closer, like it had hurt us. "We need to go now." I reached for her hand, but before I could grasp it, a deafening crash erupted behind us, echoing through the room. I spun around to see the supply room door slam shut, trapping us inside. "Let us out!" I screamed, pushing against the door. It wouldn't budge. "Stay away!" Emily cried suddenly, backing away as if she sensed something we couldn't see. "What is it?" I demanded, panic surging. The shadows flickered in the corners of the room. They coiled tighter, morphing into formless shapes. Whispers filled the air, a jumble of voices pleading and laughing all at once. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Sarah and pulling her back against the wall. But before we could escape, the whispers crescendoed, and Emily vanishing like a puff of smoke. My chest tightened with dread. What just happened? "Where did she go?" Sarah asked, eyes wide with terror. "I don't know, but we need to get out before—" "Help me!" That plea echoed again, distant yet close enough to freeze my blood. "Get ready," I breathed, preparing for whatever came next. Our time was running out. The air crackled with tension as I pushed against the door again, desperation clawing at my throat. "It has to open!" I yelled, but the heavy door remained stubbornly shut. The voices swirled around us, distorted and chaotic, blending into a maddening cacophony that scraped at my sanity. "Behind you!" Sarah screamed, her voice piercing through my panic. I whipped around just in time to see a shadow elongating across the far wall, drawing closer. It shifted shape, morphing into a silhouette that echoed a familiar figure, a hazy reflection of Emily, her eyes wide and pleading, yet distant. "Help me," she whispered again, her tone softening, full of vulnerability. "No," I shouted, fighting against the chill that swept through me. "Don't listen, it's a trap." I could see the fear in Sarah's eyes matching my own as we huddled against the wall. The shadows engulfing the supply room began to swell, seeping from the corners, reaching toward us like ghostly tendrils. Sweat trickled down my back while my mind raced for a way out. "Is there another exit?" Sarah asked, her voice tremulous. "I don't know," I admitted. "We've got to try." Suddenly, the floor beneath our feet trembled, a violent shudder that knocked us off balance. A thunderous roar erupted as the walls began to close in, warping like a surreal illusion. My heart raced as I grabbed Sarah's hand tighter, pulling her toward the corners of the room where the shadows receded slightly. "Push the shelves," I yelled, pointing to a row of cabinets stocked with supplies. "If we can knock them down, maybe we can break the door open." Together, we shoved a nearby shelf, adrenaline fueling our muscles. It scraped against the floor, but it was too heavy. The shadows surged, a dark wave of instinctual dread creeping closer. I felt cold fingers of fear clutch my spine as I glanced back at the phantom Emily watching us from within the dark. "Help me! Come find me!" she echoed, her voice mixing with the specters swirling around us. "No, not you too!" I shouted, frustration unraveling my composure. It dawned on me that the more we delayed, the stronger the shadows became. "Stay focused," I urged Sarah. "We have to get out of here." We redirected our efforts, rushing to a window above the sink. It was slightly ajar, but the frame was too narrow for us to fit through together. "Can you climb up?" I asked Sarah, panic mingling with urgency. She nodded, determination lighting her features. "I'll try." I helped her onto the countertop, our hands slick with sweat. Meanwhile, the shadows writhed and twisted around us, attempting to breach our fragile sanctuary. I felt a surge of fear crash over me. "Sarah, hurry," I urged, glancing back at Emily, who was now stepping closer. Her once soft face had twisted into something darker, her expression desperate, urging us to give in. "Please," Emily begged, a plea laced with something sinister. "They can help you." "No," I screamed, lunging in front of Sarah as the figure of Emily moved to reach for us. "Don't listen." Our hands pressed against the window frame, fighting the dark. A flicker of hope ignited as Sarah scrambled upward. And when I thought I saw a flicker of light break through the suffocating shadow, I seized the chance. "Now!" I shouted, pushing her higher. The shadows roared, closing in, yet I held my ground. A sickening crack reverberated through the room, dishing out more panic. With some effort, she climbed through the opening, just as the walls quaked and the figures lunged forward. But I couldn't wait for the darkness to crush me. I squeezed my eyes shut, the voices growing louder, and with one final push, I leapt for the window. I felt the cold glass grating against my arms as I pulled myself through, tumbling onto hard ground outside. "Help!" I cried, scrambling to my feet. I turned, ready to reach for Sarah, when a shadow loomed behind her. "No!" I shouted, but it was too late. The darkness swept around her like a wave, engulfing her in its embrace. "Sarah!" I shrieked, stretching out my hand, but she was gone, perhaps swept away into that sinister void. A sensation of loss overwhelmed me as I staggered back, the echoes of the whispers reaching into my mind. "Come, find me." They felt insatiable now, the shadows sulking in flesh and whispering tales of sorrow, pooling in the recesses of my thoughts. I sprinted away, lungs burning, every instinct screaming at me to escape. Hand over my mouth, I darted into the nearest corridor, disoriented and heart racing. As I fled, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching me. No, not just watching, but waiting for me to turn back. Each footstep on the slick tiles drowned me in a sense of dread and urgency. Turning a corner, I burst into the main lobby. There were people, confused nurses and orderlies processing patients who still lingered and lived. I collapsed against the reception desk, panting for breath, and as soon as I had gathered myself, I looked back down the hallway. "Did you see her?" I gasped, locking eyes with the receptionist, who simply shook her head. Empty. I was alone in this world of chaos, and as the reality settled in, I couldn't shake the shadowy tendrils tugging at the edges of my mind. Did Sarah make it? Was she safe somewhere else? Or had the darkness claimed her? The voice echoed in my thoughts. "Help me." Still, I could hear it. And I knew, deep down, that I'd never truly escape the hospital's grip. I moved to the limits of the lights, glancing back toward those haunted corridors and the lingering shadows that still intertwined with my reality. What had truly happened?
Was any of it real? I guess I'll never know.